before that, probably 15 years before I wrote the book, Gail held a little get-together at her house with a medium. And that evening, the medium kind of like towards the end of it, I was sitting next to Gail, and she pointed at Gail and she said, "You're going to write a book one day." And Gail said, "I am not going to write a book. You're crazy." She said she might write a book. And the medium said, "Oh yeah, it's something over here." She said, "Sure." She said, "One of you's going to write a book." And then she said, "Actually, you're right. She's writing it, but you're going to help her." And Gail was like, "No." And then we never even thought about it until like, a few months later, Gail was like, "You know what, I remembered," and we went back and talked about that. So indeed, the medium was correct. Gail helped me write my book. Okay, so the book, again, none of it's true, except for some of the good memories. So one of the true things that I kept in the book was my home address. 13 2nd Street. Dee lives at 13 2nd Street in Lewiston, right? She practices that when ready for kindergarten registration, knowing her address. And the reason I kept that is because there is no more 13 2nd Street. Those streets, they changed the name of what used to be where our section of 2nd Street is now called Perrier Street. So I figured, no one could be weird about it and go looking at 13 2nd Street, trying to figure out the house. So I was like, I'm just going to keep it. So, but now you know the secret. You go to 13 Perrier Street and check it out. But that is my real home address. And then the main character's name, Dee. I started with Dee. I thought that was my main character's name. And I will say she is not, this is another very popular one I get from high school friends. They all think that she's one of my friends from high school whose name is Dee. And she's not. I promise you. I don't know anything about what Dee's home life was like. So she is not, it wasn't based on her. However, it's sort of like when you have a child, there were some nice names in the world, but unfortunately you knew somebody with that name, and so you have a bad connotation to it now, right? So you don't name your child that. It's like that when you write. Like, I was going to spend a lot of time with Dee. So I needed that name to have a very positive connotation. And the only Dee I know is that girl from high school, and I have a very positive feel about her. So that's why I used her name. I keep expecting her to show up at my and then I did grow up in Hawaii, St. Croix, which is, that's Holy Cross Church right there. It's still there. I don't think we will see it as a church too much longer. As you know, right, most of these churches are closing. So yeah, we grew up, if you know that part of town, what's now I think it's called the Central Maine Credit Union, right, on Lisbon Street. We lived 2 streets up from there. So we could, see the steeple of the church from the house. And yeah. Did you? I was going to say on Bailey Street. So I'm going to do just a quick little reading to kind of put you in the time. For those of you who do not know, the book starts in contemporary time with the information that you see on the bookmark, where Dee is coming back to Lewiston with her college son. They're going to go visit Bates. She gets held up at Luigi's. She recognizes the gunman. There's something about him that she recognizes. And then we go back in time. Initially, we meet the gunman's grandfather and Dee's father, and we see how they're connected as young men. And then as the story evolves, we get to Dee, who's growing up in the late 60s, early 70s in Lewiston, which is my time period of life. So this is what it was like for me, and this is what it's like for you. The streets are quiet this early in the morning in the small Central Maine city. Even though the turnpike exit was only 4 blocks away, just by the new McDonald's, this city did not have commuter traffic. People who lived here worked here, maybe on the other side of town or downtown in the mills, but close enough to come home for lunch while they watched the noon news and perhaps the first contestant on Truth or Consequence, before heading back into their cars to return to their offices. Lots of people in this neighborhood spent their childhood on farms, and their adult lives in mills. So their bodies still woke at 4:30 a.m., and they made coffee and sat and read the morning paper on a rocker in the kitchen or on the glider on the porch in the warmer months, like this one. There were lights on in most houses, in the kitchens, which were almost always on the backside of these Cape-style tract homes, overlooking the small backyards, separated only by lilac bushes and respect for your neighbor's property line. The children woke in their upstairs bedrooms and heard the sounds that become ingrained in their lives. That kitchen light switch being pushed off now that the sun was up, the wood mode cabinet being pulled open, the clink of the thick mugs your mother made in a pottery class, the thump of that mug on the white linoleum countertop, dusted with brown and the occasional gold specks. The window over the kitchen sink was pushed open, then your mother's footsteps to the front door just at the bottom of the stairs. The metal click of the deadbolt, the forcible gust of release as the door was pulled open, so that all that is left between your family and the world is that metal-trimmed screen door. Summer was remarkable in the openness of that door, which stayed closed tight for most of the year, only opening for strangers who didn't know you well enough to go to the kitchen door where you really lived. So that was my childhood. And I hope you can tell that I did not grow up in a dysfunctional household. I was very happy. My parents were very good to us. They were, well, maybe they were secrets, but I don't know what they were, so. We're going to move on to me going to school, although I love this picture of Luigi. Somebody mentioned the blue goose, and there it is. So I don't know whether or not you know this, but the people who, when Luigi's went up for sale, the blue goose was also for sale, so it was one, not person, but one couple bought the two places, so they're actually connected businesses now. And I think they'll both be here for a long time, which is fantastic. And Luigi's, I should say too, I was really nervous about leaving their name in the book. I was nervous about them, I was nervous about Bates, but the publisher had that, screened by legal people and said, you're not saying anything bad about them, you're not, there's nothing really derogatory about this, so you can leave it. But I wasn't worried that much about Bates, but I was really worried about Luigi's because of shooting patterns, right? So then I went in, finally, a few months after the book was out, I went in to meet Angie, and I kind of came creeping in, and I sat at the front desk, and I said, is Angie here? And she came over, and I said, my name's Peggy Rose, and she went, you're the one who wrote that book about us. And I was like, yeah, she was like, hey, and then she's like getting all the people who work in the kitchen, they're like, oh my God, that book, oh, it's so much, it's exactly like here. And I was like, right? So they loved it. So I don't know what else to say about it. They're very into it. They are like my groupies over there. So I go in regularly now and get a Fergie, and it's great. But this is what school was like for me. And I think you will recognize this school no matter where you lived or went to school. So you have to imagine we're like 6th grade, I think. And there's a nun. We're in Catholic school, but we're sitting in rows, right? We don't sit at tables and groups. It won't be ridiculous, right? We're in rows, and we're doing rote reading so that people are taking turns to read, which teachers